As we see him pushing Kim Smith back, we could have a little bit more of that wet stuff coming from the sky. I hate to use that four-letter word, starts with R, ends with N on race day.
Especially on race day. Would have been a great battle. Jerry Haas, Kim Smith, and Comp Eliminator. We'll have to wait for that.
Yep. Going to cover her up. Tarps are coming out. Looks like we are back to some more of the wet stuff. Well, Lewis Bloom, welcome to Pay Per View. I tell you what, this is now what we get to call Phil.
I watched Steve Evans and Sid Waterford for about 4 hours do that, and it was very impressive. They did a great job.
Very long first round. I remember about 3 years ago at Topeka, we had like a 3.5-hour first round session, and you earn your keep when you work your way through those. Although the circumstances there were like 90 degrees and pure sunshine. Here it's a little cool. But same situation, working our way through. Let's go to the questions from the internet. I'm interested in seeing or getting more information about the new wave of four-link dragsters that are becoming more common in Super Comp. And that comes from Mark Slayton out of Rochester, New York. And Mark, and I guess probably the best thing I could tell you as far as that is concerned is to get an issue of National Dragster and pick it up and go through the chassis section, because everybody that is out there, Bolton cars, Yancer cars out in Arizona, Mullis cars, the undercover chassis machines. I mean, everybody right now is experimenting and playing with, designing, working on building the four-link Super Comp dragsters. Some like it, some don't. But as far as getting more information and becoming a little bit more acquainted to the four-link cars, probably the best thing I can do is to tell you to pick up an issue of National Dragster, go through, call all the chassis manufacturers, and tell them you're interested, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to send you out the information.
Most racers tell me about the four-link that when you're on a marginal racetrack that might be a little bit bumpy, you get a smoother ride. The car, therefore, is more consistent. At a track like this one here at Richmond or at Atlanta or coming up at Dallas or Topeka, it's not really a problem.
And I understand Frank Hawley's out there earning his keep a little bit more. Out there in the pit areas, over in the Corey Lee pit area, Tom Hoover's Pioneer machine. Frank Hawley, what do you got for us?
Lots of action here in Tom Hoover's funny car pit. There's a mad thrash trying to get the engine apart. It blew the blower off the car and wrecked the body, but they're not even sure what happened because the rods are in it right now. It shouldn't be a real big problem because most of these teams actually keep a spare body. Now here's driver Corey Lee looking at the damage on it. As you can see, the body's busted all the way through the center. It blew out the escape hatch there, let some of the concussion out. That helped keep the body in the car. What did it feel like? That's your first, right?
That was my first, and I hope my last. There was a pretty good pop inside there. I was coming into the lights, and it gave me no indication it was going to blow. It went from good to bad real fast, and it was all bad for a second there.
Okay, well, what do we got here? You got another body upstairs?
We have a body from a car 2 years ago, and it fits somewhat. We're going to make do with what we have and try to be back for war.
You going to be a little gun shy on that throttle next time, or go for it?
Not at all. I dig this.
That sounds like a funny car driver.
Well, looks like we've got the dryers back out on the track. A little scraping going on. Must have been just a light mist as it's worked its way through.
I spoke to Corey Lee earlier this week. Actually flew down from Newark on the airplane with him, and he's so excited about racing for Tom Hoover. That's his best run ever, a 5:14. Handled the race car in difficult circumstances. Every time he makes a better lap, you know, he gets more comfortable. He's going to be a player the rest of the season if not Tom Hoover gets back in the driver's seat.
Well, I'm sure Hoover will come back. He's on the mend after the heart surgery, and, of course, we just overjoyed to see Tom back with us this weekend. He reminds me of Vern Motes a couple of years back. Had the open heart surgery, and 5 weeks later, right back into the cockpit of his Federal Mogul funny car, showing up at Brainerd, Minnesota. Let's go back to the internet for some more questions. With the cost of fuel today, what is the average cost of a single run with the fuel cars, not including the parts that a car may hurt during a run? Well, not including the parts definitely helps out on that. Gene Hughes out of Bath, South Carolina. Gene, I tell you what, the numbers that I have heard are somewhere between $4,500 and $5,000 a run, taking everything in consideration and not hurting any parts. Kind of expensive out there, Lewis.
Very expensive. That's why you see the major corporate sponsors on the race cars. I'd say $4,000 to $5,000 is a pretty accurate number. A couple years ago, Kenny Bernstein took the entire expense for the whole season, everything from phone calls, room expenses, and it came out to about $4,000 to $5,000 a run.
That was for the phone call. Steve Evans joining us in from the background. Another question, Bart Stanley out of Bay City, Texas. His driver Troy Buff at the races today. So what are his standings this year? He's from my hometown of Bay City, Texas, just trying to keep up with him. Well, Bart, I tell you what, Troy drives a Federal Mogul dragster. Runs out of the Division 4 territory. Very tough campaigner. Troy Buff and family and the gang are not at this race. This is a little out of pace for them to come this far east, but they are very tough campaigners there in the Midwest. I know Troy was at Houston, and if memory serves me correctly, they did not qualify for the Slick 50 Nationals, and I may stand to be corrected on that. And Troy, if you're watching, I do apologize. But I do know that with that car, they will campaign basically in the Midwest, run the Topeka races, the Dallas races, Houston, Memphis, Brainerd, Denver. They'll make the races in the middle part of the country. The Federal Mogul Dragster, Federal Mogul Funny Car guys don't do the major league campaign for the most part. I mean, you do have your Jay Paynes and you do have your Tony Bartones, but for the most part, they stay a little on the regional side. And I would also be willing to bet money that Troy may be in Topeka, Kansas this weekend, because there is a Federal Mogul Drag Racing Series event going on at my home track, Heartland Park, Topeka. In fact, as we speak, they're working their way through eliminations, and I've got to call back in a little bit and find out what's going on. But I do know that race is there, and it's a regional event for Troy Buff and his Federal Mogul Dragster, and that could be possibly quite well where he is.
I've also heard that Pat Austin's up in the Midwest as he races up there in Division 6, qualifying number 1 of the 580 with his funny car in the Federal Mogul Funny Car Series. Got a great battle here coming up with the quarterfinal round featuring Frank Manzo, Tony Bartone, Bob Newberry, some tough customers in Federal Mogul Funny Car. Quickest pass ever by Jay Payne, 5:52, the quickest supercharged pass of all time here this weekend.
Well, as we get ready to read another question, a word comes to me that Frank Hawley's out there in the pit area, and he's working his way over to Dean Scusa's pit area. And Dean ran a pretty good 5:19. Here's Frank.
All of us here at the races have been praying that the rain stops and it doesn't come back. There's one racer probably, his name's Cruz Pedregon, that's just praying for rain, because after that terrible fire, there's no way they could fix the car in time. They need a break. Well, if they don't get it fixed in time, and at this point it doesn't look like they're going to, the man that's going to benefit from that is Dean Scusa right here. What happens to you? Tell the folks what happens if Cruz doesn't make it to the next round.
Well, I mean, obviously we get a shoe into the semis, but I mean, I don't like that. I really don't. I mean, you know, especially when you have a fire like that, it's a test of your mettle. I wish it was fixable, because this Matco team, we don't want to go up there and race, and the fans want to see a race, but unfortunately that's drag racing, and yeah, we'll take it, of course.
I was just going to say, you're not going to give them 3 or 4 extra hours. When it's time to race, you're ready to go up there.
That's right. I mean, and it's not our decision, unfortunately. NHRA, you know, they're on a schedule here, and we must abide by that as racers. Thanks.
Scusa was quite happy with his 5:19 at 3:06 a little bit earlier on as I was down there talking to him, and they can stand to benefit a little bit if competition doesn't come back for round number 2.
If the rain continues, 2 racers besides Cruz Pedregon, Ron Capps will also have a chance to fix their race car if they can get some time to go back and go to a chassis shop. It's a tough weekend for the Fuel Funny Cars here at the Virginia Motorsports Park Complex.
Well, looking at Ron Capps' Copenhagen machine down track, I don't know that car's going to need a chassis shop. I think if Team Torch shows up, does a quick weld, they had one tube that was cracked on the car, and I'm sure they'll measure it and check everything out. But for the most part, the damage was accountable to the left front suspension and, of course, the body. The body is the big question. But in as far as the chassis or frame of the car itself is concerned, I think that car's probably a pretty good, still workable car. Another question from the internet. My question concerns the number of cars in the fuel classes. It seems that the number of cars seem to be getting close to the 16-car fields, while the Pro Stock qualifiers are growing by leaps and bounds. Is NHRA looking at ways of attracting more cars to compete in these very competitive and crowd-pleasing classes? That comes from Versailles, Indiana, and Richard Halcomb. Richard, I can tell you this. I know for a fact that there are probably a good 50 top fuel cars in this country. And if that is the case, all they need is a little bit of sponsorship money, a little bit of income from whomever. Maybe John Deere, maybe Band-Aid. In fact, we were talking earlier this week about Band-Aid would probably be a pretty good sponsor for Al Hoffman. He's got the Band-Aid on the car, and Al's kind of a tough guy. It'd be a natural fit. As far as filling the fields have been full all year long. And as far as growing the classes or helping the classes to grow, like Pro Stock, it's just a matter of the cars out there finding the money, finding the sponsorship, finding the assistance, whatever the case may be, to put themselves into the program and make themselves available to run every weekend. It's a tough deal. We talked about the $4,500 to $5,000 expense per lap for the fuel cars, and not a cheap deal, but it's a very competitive sport. You've seen the numbers here this weekend, the qualifying and everything as it goes on. So I think the answer to your question is the growth is out there. It's just a matter of putting everything together, putting the package together, putting the numbers together, and making everything work. And it's a tough deal. I don't care if you're running a super stock car, a super street car, or a top fuel car. A little bit of sponsorship help and a good crew to go along with it will do a lot towards putting you into the program and making you available to go racing. Lewis?
It's all about money, no doubt about that. At this point, we're trying to dry the track. It's still raining as you look behind us here at Virginia Motorsports Park. No doubt the folks from NHRA trying their best. We're definitely checking the weather station, taking a look to see what's going on. You can see the fans in the grandstands. They have their umbrellas up. Some of those great NHRA tarps on top of them. It's really a tough weekend for the fans here at Virginia Motorsports Park, especially with all that great qualifying.
Well, let's take a look at Pro Stock, where we are as we go into the second round. Warren Johnson taking the earlier win. He'll be up against Jerry Ekman. Darrell Alderman taking his first win in quite a while. I shouldn't say first win in quite a while, but it's definitely good to see them back in the program. They'll be taking on Bruce Allen, who upset number 5 qualifier George Marnell.
Marnell losing with a 692. Here's Kurt Johnson. He'll be taking on Mark Powick. Steve Schmidt will take on Jim Yates. Yates, who won $500 from Slick 50 with a whole shot win over Troy Coughlin, part of the Warren Johnson team. That's a major upset right there.
Got a good pairing coming up there in Steve Schmidt and Jim Yates. I mean, those two guys will go at it tooth and nail, and Schmidt, again, if he can get out on Yates, he's got the horsepower, he's got the mile per hour to run the number to get around the McDonald's machine of Yates. So Pro Stock looks like it could be a pretty good battle, as it always is. Again, 24 cars running in the 6s here this weekend. Absolutely incredible. Quickest ever field. We saw Warren go 688.3, 200.53 miles an hour at round number 1. Oh, absolutely nuts what they're doing out here. And like Sid Waterman was saying earlier, the numbers you did not expect to see today with the moisture that's in the air. The air condition has changed tremendously from the last 2 days.
We had some of the better launches based on the 60-foot times by the Pro Stock cars. No doubt the racetrack for the first 60 feet is working great. Top end seems to be pretty good based on the 690s, and obviously Warren going over 200 miles per hour. But Pro Stock, a great show here at the Pennzoil Nationals. And Warren, I mean, he could go maybe a 687. I mean, you never know. I mean, who could ever think that?
Let's go to Funny Car and see where we're at with our Funny Car for round number 2. Pairings coming up on your screen. John Force taking on Kenji Okazaki, and Force will tell you he never lets Kenji, lets Kenji get out of his thoughts, because Kenji has been known to get out and run. Cruz Pedregon up against Dean Scusa, and it'll probably be Scusa on a single, as Cruz is suffered some damage there in the first round.
Had a tough run with the McDonald's car. Ron Capson, the Copenhagen Camaro, will take on Randy Anderson, last winner on the tour. Chuck Etchels takes on Corey Lee, who we spoke to a few minutes ago in the pits with Frank Hawley.
Yeah, some good pairing shaping up there, and Randy Anderson may have a single if they can't get the Caps car back. That'll be an unknown quantity until we get to round number 2. The rain delay giving everybody a little bit more time to thrash over there in the pits, and I'll guarantee you the thrashing is exactly what's going on over there. Frank Hawley out in the pit area doing his thing, chasing reports down, seeing what he can find out hither and yon. And I'm sure as soon as we get another little update from Frank, we'll throw it at you. Go back to the internet and check some questions.
Folks have been busy with their home computer.
I'm here to tell you. Let's see, this comes from David McNabb. Thank you, David. You didn't put your hometown on, but wherever you are, we thank you very much. David just has some suggestions. Please use more cameras in the pits for pan shots only. Please don't talk when the top fuel funny cars are running. We're trying to avoid that. Please use more written text for stats and the like. We're working on that. Steve Evans addressed that earlier. Don't run commercials at all. None. David, this is pay-per-view. We don't have any.
No commercials.
Please recap the 97 season with film clips. I think we've been updating you as the day goes on. Probably not enough for David, but we'll keep the day going. Prove the audio of the burnouts. Turn up the volume. David, all I can tell you is wire it in through your home stereo system and crank it up to 100. David, I tell you what, you got some good points, and we're working on most all of them.
Sounds like a future director.
Oh, goodness gracious. Wayne thing, look out. Here we go. We got Frank out in the pits doing some digging around. He's got that Warren guy, the professor, Frank Hawley.
.688, another 200-mile-per-hour run. That's the quickest run ever for an NHRA legal pro stock car. And these guys are thrashing on this thing, trying to get another round in, where they can even go quicker. The 88, any changes, or did you just set it up to run the same as it did yesterday?
I think we're going to set her up pretty much the same. It was plenty aggressive. We might soften her up just a little bit to be safe, but it was pretty close to a perfect run. It was real nice.
Okay, so where'd the little bit of increase in performance, ET and mile an hour, come from?
We've got a little bit more tailwind today, a little bit more tailwind, and we got off the starting line a little better than we did the other night. A little bit better 60-foot.
A little bit better 60-foot time makes all the difference in the world for the pro stock guys. Just getting that car launched down the racetrack. The rain continues to fall here at Virginia Motorsports Park as we were working our way through second round of competition eliminator. We hit them yesterday for round number 1, and the tarp still on the cars of Jerry Haas and Kim Smith, two of the quickest cars in competition eliminator racing. Lewis, you're from this part of the country. What's this going to do here today?
Well, I would want to say something positive, but I keep looking at the flags, and the flags have started to blow once again. Hopefully this front will come through. There's a lot of people in the grandstands wanting to see some great action. They've been a great crowd all weekend, and they stood up and cheered for Warren Johnson on Friday night with that great 200-mile-per-hour pass. They want to see some more records. They want to see Matt Hines go another 720. So hopefully, with a little bit of luck, we'll get some more racing in.
I'll tell you what, I've been to a lot of the national event tracks and worked a lot of the national events over the last few years. The crowd last night, after we ran the second session of our pro eliminator categories, the crowd stayed as we worked our way through additional rounds of stock, super gas, super street, super comp. And I'm here to tell you, these folks, guys and gals, ladies and gentlemen, however you want to call it, absolutely amazed me. They were here until the last car went down the racetrack, and we said goodnight to them. I mean, I realize this is stock car country, and this is only the third race here at Virginia Motorsports Park. But I think here on the East Coast, here in Virginia, we've definitely acquired quite a group of drag racing fans.
No doubt hardcore. They stayed till the bitter end. They were here Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Some great sportsman action in stock and super gas and super comp. Hope they'll get to show you those cars coming up in a bit as they'll be stepping into round number 4. Once again, a view of the grandstands. It's still coming down here at the Pennzoil Nationals. We'll be getting to some of your internet questions coming up in a little bit. Looks like Bob's got a few more.
And we keep kind of shuffling through these a little bit here as they keep bringing them into us and throwing them at us. And let's see what else we've got.
Waiting for some of my friends from New Jersey to say hello on the internet.
All my friends back home are at Topeka watching the drag race there. Dear NHRA, as a longtime fan and member of your organization, I've never spoken out, as generally have nothing to complain. Overall live coverage is the greatest. I'm trying to just kind of skim through this real quick. Let's have as much live feel so that the viewer thinks this event is happening today and now, and that's exactly what we're doing right now with the pay-per-view. And unfortunately today, with the moisture coming down from the sky, we've had to get back to some of the tapes. There was no question, no name on the question, so we don't know. We just keep hanging on. Tell you what, I understand Frank's out in the pit area again doing some digging, and we're over in the McDonald's pit area. Frank Hawley out there, and he's got some pretty wild news for us. Frank?
An update in Cruz Pedregon's pit area. Now this car here that they're working on is actually the car that was in the fire. Now, a lot of things happen bad when you have a bad fire like that. It burns off every wire, every cable on the entire car. It needs all new lines, all new brake lines, all new air lines, all new ignition wires. And I thought a while ago they wouldn't even try and attempt anything like this, but Dave Settles, crew chief, they're thrashing on this thing. Dave, you've done a lot of work since we were over here a while ago. How much longer do you think it would take for you to get this car where you can go back to the starting line?
I think we could make it if we had till about 6 o'clock to make it. It's already got an engine in it. We've replumbed it basically, put another A-frame on it. We got some guys helping us from other teams over here, and we'll have some heads on it not too long, and yeah, about 3 more hours.
Now, did you come back with the idea that, hey, we're going to fix this thing, or did you come back with the idea of putting it in the truck and then suddenly decided you might have time?
No. From the time we're on the return road back, we felt like if it rained, we could make next round. Give us a little buffer with a little rainfall, and I think we can make it.
I guess we're going to find out. Here's another team hoping for rain.
I tell you what, they're thrashing over there in the McDonald's pit area. Cruz wants nothing more to do than to come back. He made that statement at the other end of the track as he was talking to the guys from National Dragster, giving them an interview right out of the car, and he wants to come back. He said he was breathing all the way through it, and car's repairable. It's a lot of repairable, but car's repairable. Steve, you want to jump on in here?
Yeah, I'm not sure this mic is out. Yep, it is now. You know, we got a good question from John Gibson of York, Pennsylvania on the internet. And John says a perfect reaction time is .400. Why is that? When does the time exactly start? Why isn't it 000? That really is a good question. In fact, there is one system out on the market that some tracks use that measures the reaction time exactly like that. A perfect light is 000. In NHRA racing, a perfect light is 400. And the reason is kind of historically interesting. A decade or so ago, when this was installed, pardon me, it was really not intended to be used to time the reactions of the drivers. In fact, I remember the announcers of that period, the Winter Nationals, we were told, don't use this. This is only to validate the system. If it's 399 and the light isn't red, we know the system is bad. If it's a 400 and the light is not green, then we know there's something wrong with the system. It was only installed really as a systems check, and accidentally some loudmouth announcers started using it as a reaction time. I don't know who that might have been, but that's a really good question, but maybe someday they'll simplify. But right now it works also as a validation of the entire system.
Well, that it does. I mean, and it gives everybody a good baseline performance to tune with, especially in the super category cars. I mean, the reaction time is so critical for those guys.
Okay, we had one that wanted more pit reports. Frank Hawley heard that, and he dashed immediately over to the Copenhagen pits.
We're standing in Don Prudhomme's funny car pit area. There ought to be a car here, crew chief Tom Anderson. What's the scoop? Everybody's wondering, asking if you could fix it, and obviously not.
No, the front half, the chassis needs to be front half. The whole front half needs to be replaced. We're out of bodies. We went through 2 bodies this weekend. The only prayer that we have is that it rains for the rest of the day here, and they reschedule the rest of this race until next week or whatever, and then we'll be back.
What mechanically happened to the car?
Mechanically, we've been adjusting the weight and balance on the car to try to get it to stick better at the starting line, and we put too much rear weight on it. It did a wheel stand. When it came down, it broke the front of the chassis, and consequently, he'd run it down through there, and when he got to the finish line, he had no way to steer it. So when he pulled the parachutes, it put all the weight back on the front end of the car, and he hit the wall.
He didn't know that was going on going down the track, though, did he?
Oh, no, he was just having fun. He was doing a good job, you know. He didn't realize he didn't have any steering.
Well, I'm glad you guys look like maybe you're getting the car sorted out. I'm glad you still got a sense of humor, but it'd be great to see you in the second round if at all possible.
Yeah, well, the only way that'll be possible is if it rains, so pray for rain.
Well, everybody at home just goes, no! Don't pray for rain. Well, that's a good news, bad news situation. They'd like to have it. We don't. We're going to go into our top fuel situation and show you a little bit of pairings as we get ready for round number 2. Gary Scelzi taking on Kenny Bernstein, rematch of the finals in Atlanta just a couple of weeks ago. Scelzi with a great number 1 qualifying shot. Bernstein coming out of number 8 position. Mike Dunn taking on Paul Romine. Romine able to get down track around Amados, up in smoke. Left and right-handed run as they work their way through. So Scelzi and Bernstein, Dunn and Romine. Lewis?
Corey Mack will take on Scott Coletta, and Bob Vandergrift Jr. will take on Bruce Sarver. Lane choice, by the way, going to Scelzi. Romine over Dunn. Corey Mack with a great 464. And in the Vandergriff-Sarver matchup, a good one, 488-49 going to Bob Vandergriff.
That'd be some good pairings as we work our way through round number 2 of Top Fuel. But right now, as you can see, there are no race cars going down the racetrack. We are in Dinwiddie, Pennsylvania at Virginia Motorsports Park, home of the, where did I say, Dinwiddie, Pennsylvania?
I think you said Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, I'm east.
you're out of your time zone, right?
I'm east of home. Yeah, I'm an hour off here, folks. The Pennzoil Nationals presented by Auto Track. And sorry about that. Louis, this is your part of the country, but we've got a question here from the internet, and I'm going to let you handle this one. You can talk about it a little bit, and I'll jump in there with you if you want.
It says, why is the Supercomp classes and its drivers considered one of the toughest classes to compete in? Comes from John Aldridge in Peoria, Arizona. Well, everybody has the same type of race car. In Supercomp, a car that's got a delay box, a car that's got a throttle stop. They use a weather station, they look at the numbers, they put them in, and you react to that green light in 0.4 of a second. Now, a couple moments ago, I was in the next room, the next TV studio with Dave McClellan. We had a little practice tree, and McClellan was 4.0 on just about every light. I was about 4.20. Now, when you get guys like Dave McClellan out there, and you get 137 of them, men and women, it takes a lot of luck at the finish line. It's a very hard category.
Well, I think another reason that the super categories, be it Super Street, Super Gas, or Super Comp, are so competitive is these guys are the backbone of NHRA drag racing. They are the sportsman racers that are out there every weekend, whether it be Heartland Park, Topeka, Virginia Motorsports Park, wherever the case. They're out there every weekend. They're hammering it. They're down track, doing 10, 15, 20 laps a weekend.
Right.
And that makes all the difference. It gives them seat time, gives them experience in the car, gives them laps, and laps are what make you a better driver.
Why don't we do another couple of questions? They practice every weekend. They also run the bracket program at their local track, going off the top hole with the delay box, and they're out there every week. And guys like Scotty and Edmund are professional sportsman racers. They tour the entire country, and they're tough to beat. 24, 25, 26 championships between the two of them. Steve?
Didn't mean to butt in.
Hey, no problem.
Okay, not like we don't have enough time, right? Okay, continuing with some of the really great stuff off of the internet. And first of all, thank all of you for some of the high praise you're sending us. I hope it's deserved. Sandy and Jeff Barrett, Lake Worth, Florida, show sportsman racing during downtime. Enough of the pros. Well, there were no sportsmen running during the downtime. That's why it's called downtime. Had there been any cars going down this racetrack, Sandy and Jeff, you would have seen them. If, in case you mean, why didn't we show some sportsman qualifying highlights from earlier days, there's no tape of that. We start shooting those cars on Sunday for the Federal Mogul Sportsman Show, so nothing really exists of those from the earlier day. But believe me, if it was going down this racetrack, you would have seen it. And, you know, here's one from Louis and Oliver in Whiting, Indiana. We realize there are many adjustments to the cars before they hit the staging lanes. How many are allowed at the tree? Well, once that car is pre-staged, if a crewman even touches the car, it's grounds for disqualification. And that happened, a couple of years ago? I think it was Gordy Rivera, possibly, at the Arizona race. I think it was. One of the crew guys, for whatever reason, reached out and tried to do something, and it was grounds for disqualification. So that's that. Once it gets that close to the starting line area, or even the starter can try to shoot the guy off and he persists, he could be disqualified.
The last thing you see on the funny cars, they lift the body up and they usually go to the fuel system. That's about the only car I really see, the funny cars in the top fuel, where they actually make an adjustment right before they pull up to the starting line.
Yeah, but it's before they're pre-staged.
Absolutely.
Right.
And David out of Rockdale, Texas, one of my favorite towns. Would it be possible to incorporate educational segments regarding products, tuning, driving, etc. between races? My son and I are new to the sport and are thirsty for more information, especially from the pros. Well, you're new to the sport, guys. We do try to do that quite often, as a matter of fact. As we go through the season and you continue to watch, I think you'll see on whatever network it may be, ESPN, TNN, even ABC, we do as much of that as time permits. In fact, that is my favorite thing to do, is to try to let you, through osmosis or whatever, learn a little bit more about this sport where you are more comfortable watching. Because I honestly feel the more comfortable a new fan is with the sport, the more comfortable they are to say, hey, neighbor, come with me to the drags. I don't know anything about it. I do. I'll show you. So we will try to do that as much as we can, obviously not at the detriment of showing live action or taped action or whatever. So I'll tell you, you guys are just aces as far as the questions are concerned. They're just fabulous.
Been great questions.
Okay, I am told by the truck, hello, truck, and I'll let you guys handle this. I'm writing a book called Hello, Truck, and
Hello,
that's another
Truck.
story.
I haven't said that yet.
Anybody that has ever worked in remote sports television knows the truck only talks to you when they want to talk to you. Ooh. Hello, truck. We have got funny car qualifying, guys, and here's the numbers from Saturday morning. You want me to do it? Oh, okay.
We'll pass the list back now.
Pass the list back. Okay, only worked 4.5 hours in one shift. All right, this was yesterday morning. Gary Bolger up against Del Worsham. The Auburn Foundry car of Del Worsham. Why don't you guys sit there? Okay, this was Gary Bolger, the Creasy family racing car. Nobody does more with less than Dale Creasy and Gary Bolger. Just to qualify for them is huge because that pays over $6,000, and that is enough cash flow for them to get on to the next event. And that used to be exactly the same way for Del Worsham until they got some sponsorship from Kragers, Chucks, and Checker Auto. It's different companies in different parts of the country, which is why they have to have all three of them on there. The track was good. The sun was up. Nobody even had a jacket on in this session of funny car qualifying yesterday. Del Worsham, former Rookie of the Year, 3-time national event winner, but it's been a long while. Worsham may not have been staged straight because the car instantly dived to the right-hand wall, and Gary Bolger did exactly what he wanted to do, and that was get qualified. And he ended up in the show on the 16th spot. Takes a lot of courage these days, Sid, and a little bit of insanity to try to campaign a nitro funny car without virtually any kind of backing.
Oh, that's absolutely the case, Steve. You know, the Creasy family, they just completely low-budget thing. Of course, as you take a look at it, the Del Worsham team is the same. And unfortunate for Del, they did not qualify. This is a new car, and they've certainly had their share of handling problems and did not get in the show. Very, very unusual for this team. Very unusual for this young man. Great driver, but he certainly knows when to get out of the throttle and not damage their equipment.
Oh, he is one smart driver. That's something that he has to know. His father Chuck has instilled in him. You know, kid, if we don't have parts, we can't go to the next race. They were runner-up at Rockingham, the Winston Invitational, and made $40,000 for runner-up, which was the biggest payday they'd ever seen. Okay, it is Saturday morning. The pair you hear rattling in the background were Chuck Etchells and Gary Densham. Densham had some horrible luck. Was it at Houston or Atlanta when he made a fabulous qualifying run, his last effort, and accidentally nicked the cone right at the finish line and was disqualified?
It was at Houston, down at Houston. It was unfortunate because he ran a great 5-0 pass, but unfortunately when he hit that cone, that's disqualification. You cannot go across that center line or touch it. You can touch it, but you can't go across. That's the important thing.
It's kind of like tennis. If it's on the line, it's good. Densham, I don't know what it would take to get this guy down. He's over 50 years of age. He's still an active school teacher in Southern California, industrial arts, which is part of the way that he managed to race all these years. When you'd see a new trailer, chances are the kids build it as a project at school.
I'll tell you, this guy has been great not only for the sport of drag racing, but for his students as well. He really involves them in this car, and they get involved in every shape imaginable. They do the painting sometimes, and a lot of the chassis work. Great group of people.
And there's an awful lot of kids out there that wouldn't make a scoop for their mother, but that sure work on a funny car in a heartbeat if that was part of the industrial arts program. Chuck Etchells is an engraver by trade and owns a company in Putnam, Connecticut that prints wallpaper. Hey, that's a good business. Somebody has to make the plates and print the wallpaper. That's what Etchells does. Tim Richards right there, what he does is Rich Joe Amato to 5.5 or 4.5 Winston championships. Came on board with several teams, worked for Etchells, left, and then came back and now they have all found out how to get along on and off the racetrack. Even though he lit the tires up at about 1,000 feet Saturday morning, Chuck Etchells pounded out a 5.17 with a 4 at 237 miles an hour. And Gary Densham, a respectable and a qualifying 5.23 at 275. Chuck Etchells, the Kendall Super Winch car, always immaculate. Chuck does a terrific job servicing his sponsors and giving them maximum return on their investment. And I think drag racers, as much, if not more so than any form of motorsports, really feels an obligation to the people that invest in their cars. And I think John Force and Kenny Bernstein certainly have set the example for that.
Well, they certainly have. There's no doubt whatsoever that they have done a great job in setting an example for the rest of the teams to follow. And that's so important that you service the people that finance your operation. You've got to give them the maximum amount of exposure. You know, you stop me to think about TV time, as you well know, Steve, costs so much money. And when you get on there for 20 or 30 seconds with your sponsor's name on the side, those are dollar signs ringing in your sponsor's ears.
Now, we just saw them prime the injector. Said at one time it was gasoline. Is it still?
Yes, they still use gasoline on almost all the engines. The reason is it's so much easier to fire with all the ignition leads that they have to have. You got to remember these engines are running anywhere between 48 and 54 degrees of a lead. With nitromethane, it's awfully hard to fire those cars with that without some kind of a problem.
Alcohol wouldn't work? Al Hoffman wanted to show his fans that he was back big time. Monster burnout.
You asked the question, will alcohol work? Yes, but it takes exactly double the volume of alcohol to run the engine that it does gasoline. So a small squirt of gas would be fine. A large gulp of alcohol would be required.
Yeah, okay, so gasoline is still, that's the only time you eat gasoline is used.
It's actually a 2-to-1 ratio. Alcohol is double the weight and volume of gasoline.
Plus gasoline has a lower flash point and gets it started instantly. Al Hoffman, he said, somebody asked him about how could he afford to do this. He said, you know what? He said, contrary to popular opinion, I am not broke. He said, I had a good sponsor for a lot of years. I didn't build a multi-million-dollar shop. You know what he's talking about. I didn't buy a big fancy bus. You know, I don't have 3 crew chiefs. He said, I can afford to do this. Don't feel sorry for Al Hoffman.
I'll tell you, Al came out to my place back in the middle 70s and to learn how to become a racer when I was in the engine building business. And there's big Jim Dunn standing there. I'll tell you, this guy, he's been around a long time. I used to race against him myself many years ago.
Look at the dictionary under tough. There'll be a picture of Big Jim.
Yeah, him and Al Hoffman would be in the same photograph.
Kenji Okazaki takes such verbal abuse from Jim Dunn. Not so much now, but in his formative years. And that's just the way Jim is. And Kenji picked up on that pretty soon and just understood that's his personality.
That's why his kid quit driving for him. That's why Mike Dunn quit driving for Big Jim, because they couldn't get along with each other because of the way Jim is. He's a very formidable competitor, and he expects things to be done the way he says, nobody else's way.
And he holds nothing back. This again, I repeat, Saturday morning. Kenji had problems. Al wasn't a picture-perfect run, but he needed to get it in the show, and he wanted to make only as few runs as absolutely possible, not to save money, but to save wear and tear on his badly bruised body. A 5.17 at 259 miles an hour.
And that was pretty impressive. That 5.17, if you notice, folks, the car smoked the tire starting around the 8,900 foot mark, and that 8,900 foot mark, when you start smoking them that early, pull a 5.17 out of it, just shows the car has tremendous momentum. He still clicked it off early, so great run by Al Hoffman.
Indeed. If you've just returned to your television set, what we're doing here is, it's a very technical term in the broadcast industry. It's called, we're filling, folks. We're faking it.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, because it doesn't look real good outside. In fact, it looks worse than it has all day, to tell you the honest truth. And you folks that are emailing us as to what's going to happen here, what if the whole day didn't? We don't know yet. We quite frankly don't know yet. This whole pay-per-view thing is so new that I'm not sure anybody yet understands exactly with satellite time, and do you do this, and do you know, we just don't know. And I don't want to open that Pandora's box any more than I already have. In fact, I'm sorry I even did that. The Safety Safari crew pushing off Al Hoffman Saturday morning. Get him off that racetrack. This is virtually unedited tape, as I think you can tell, because on all the qualifying sessions, they just kind of run safety, as they call it, in case something should happen that they may want that piece of tape for later. So Sid Waterman, my old pal Buckets from Northern California, and I mean Northern California. If you're ever going to try to find Sid's shop, I suggest you take a very well-handling automobile. Don't try to do it in a pickup truck. For God's sakes, don't try to take your 18-wheeler to Waterman Racing Components, because that road is...
Well, they don't call it Dramamine Drive forever for any reason in particular.
Dramamine Drive?
Yeah, that's what's called it. Take a look at the rain, folks. I mean, it's coming down here now. It's real unfortunate. And unfortunately, that's what we saw. That 3-hour window that we had, we probably pretty well used up. And it's not looking good at this particular point.
To get in, what we have been able to accomplish, or NHRA has been able to accomplish, and we've been able to bring to your television set, is phenomenal. Because this was, put a bullet in it this morning. I mean, that was exactly what the weathermen said. Boys, put a bullet in it. You ain't got a shot. But NHRA was able to fulfill their obligation to the paying fans here at Virginia Raceway Park. They saw some phenomenal action. I talk about unpredictable. I mean, Cruz Pedregon burns it to the ground, Caps wins and stuffs it in the wall. I mean, there was action and something unusual happening everywhere you look.
Well, you know, the only thing this good rain is good for is those two particular cars, and probably Tom Hoover, because those three all didn't had enough damage. They could not come back for this round. They will be able to fix them as long as it's the same chassis. They will be able to fix it and come back should this race get delayed.
Not to be a pessimist, because I'm not by nature, but it's going to be very difficult, as late as it is in the day at 3:45, with no sun whatsoever and very cold temperatures, to drive this racetrack. I'm not saying that Steve Gibbs and company aren't going to try to do that, because they are not known to pull the plug quickly. But it will be tough. Waterman, you found any interesting questions there off the old net?
Well, you know, there's a... Why don't you read a few and see if I can't answer them for you, Steve? I've got some there sitting here. You have...
Sid, if you can't answer them, nobody can. All right, how much research is done by top fuel teams during the week before the race? Tim, Valdosta, Georgia.
Well, Tim, let me put it this way. It's constant. 364 days a year, those guys are working on that car and R&Ding somewhere. There's some of the teams, such as John Force, have people back at the shop doing week. When Austin Coyle leaves the racetrack on Monday, he, Bernie Fiddley, fly right straight back to the track in California and get to work on all the research and development that comes on. And sometimes they try it that week. Sometimes they wait till the Monday after the race to do their testing.
Okay, here is a three-parter. I'm trying to pick up a name here. This is Judd Robertson. Anyway, he says, is Kristen Powell the youngest top fuel driver ever? And don't hold me to this. I would say that John Stewart.
Yes, I believe John Stewart was 17 and was probably...
16.
16. Well, that's right. He was 16 and she
Sacramento,
was 17.
California, and John Stewart is still in this sport. Last year, he worked for Shelley Anderson on her crew, and this year, I believe he's working for Bob Vandergriff Jr. So, John Stewart would be my answer. If you disagree, hey, let us know. Maybe we don't know it all. But I'm talking about who ran a national event, okay? And that, I believe, would be John Stewart at the age of 16. Is Eddie Hill the oldest top fuel driver ever?
As far as I know, yes. I don't believe that anybody has ever gone down the race course that's older. I don't believe Big Daddy has reached that point yet.
I would have to agree with you on that one. It says, if not, who were the youngest and the oldest? Well, we kind of answered that question. You know, Frank Hawley, you know, if you watch NHRA today, and I hope you all do on TNN, you know that 423 times I have said a pen and patch, a decal, a rule book. Now I got a new guy. I got a guy in training that is going to convince you to join NHRA.
Hey, here I am in the pit area with world-famous fuel funny car driver John Force. John, how's it going today?
Well, you know, Frank, I'm just hanging out here with my friends signing autographs. My little buddy here's got a question. He wants to know how to become an NHRA member and get a membership.
Well, let's tell him a little bit about it. First thing you do for $57 a year is you get 48 issues of National Dragster. You get a pin, a patch, a rule book, a decal, and your choice of either the video Drag Racing 95 or a great-looking NHRA T-shirt. Anything else you got?
And if you join right now, your good old buddy John Force is going to give you free, if you call the number 1-800-333-6472 to be an NHRA member. I will give you the book that I saw Elvis at 1,000 foot.
Whoa, is that a good deal? Yeah! That's a great deal. So you got no excuses. Pick up the telephone, call that number, and join the NHRA. John Force and myself, we're both members.
Right.
I got to tell you, I might rejoin to get the book. That is a really interesting piece. It's called John Force, I Saw Elvis at 1,000 Feet, which was his great line after he crashed in Memphis, Tennessee a few years ago. And it's not a book as you think of it. What it is great John Force lines that he actually said, quotes, illustrated by some picture of an incident or a goofy thing or whatever. There's one of John and I at the far end of the racetrack. It is really a nice piece that was put together by National Dragster Publications. Well, I tell you what, they're starting to load animals 2 by 2 in a Winnebago. Things are not good here at Virginia Motorsports Park, and it's a shame for this whole region because other than the last couple of days, it has been inundated with rain over the past few weeks.
Yeah, it certainly has. You know, we got here the day before yesterday, and it really looked like we were going to get this thing off in fine fashion. Even the satellite yesterday looked like we knew there was rain coming, but we didn't figure it to be here either late tonight or tomorrow morning. Guess what, folks? We were wrong.
Apparently. You know, here's an interesting question from Jim Paget from Missouri, St. Clair, Missouri. It says, hello from St. Clair, Steve. We're watching on a big dish. All right, we finally got through the big dish guys. We love your pay-per-view coverage. Well, we see Nitro Harley drags. We would like to see more of them on the other NHRA, whatever network coverage as well. Thanks to Diamond P for the great work. See you at the Gateway Nationals. We have 4 fuel bikes here this weekend. In fact, some of them have run well over 200 miles an hour in the 6s. They are not Harleys, however. They are Japanese Suzukis or whatever. On occasion, NHRA has the Harley motorcycles and these other bikes as exhibitions. Whatever is at the racetrack, if we're doing pay-per-view, we'll show you. If it's not pay-per-view, I doubt you're going to see it.
We were actually going to have 2 runs today. There was 2 scheduled yesterday, which they did, and there was 2 scheduled for today. But obviously, with this rain-out situation, the odds are, even if we get the race back underway, there's not going to be enough time to run those bikes. I'm sure they've probably loaded up more out the pits already.
Well, Frank Hawley is still over at the John Force Pitterhead trying to get one of those books for free, probably knowing Hawley. And as long as he's there, Frank is going to check in his technology center because John has some equipment there that tells us a little about the weather.
Okay. I'm standing in John Force's Castrol Technology Center along with a couple people I've known for a while, NHRA Division II Director Bill Holt and John's crew chief Austin Coyle. You're watching television. What are you looking at there, guys?
Well, we're looking at the DTN satellite system showing us every 15-minute update on the weather.
Well, you know, I'm a fan of the Weather Channel myself, and I know that when I flick it on, I don't want to see green. What's all this green stuff?
Well, green's not good right now, and it looks like we got a lot of it here in Virginia. We're going to wait this thing out and see what happens, though.
This looks like a pretty current picture. Weather forecast right now seems to be favoring guys like Cruz or Pedregon over there because apparently they're trying to fix that car, Austin.
Yeah, it looks to me like that the guys that have had the misfortune of severe breakage may have about a week to repair the damage.
And if they got a week, I think that's going to be just enough time to run the second round of competition.
No, thank you, Frank Hawley. We didn't need... That's the only man I've ever heard say, I'm a big fan of the Weather Channel. Hawley, there's other stuff on. Come on. Seinfeld, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sorry the weather let us down. I'm really disappointed because this thing was really shaping up to be one humdinger of a drag race.
Well, it isn't over yet.
That's
and
true.
Thank the good Lord we got one round. And here's something you can talk about. Bill McCain, Port Neches, Texas. How much throttle pedal travel is there and how hard is it to control during the burnout?
Well, the actual throttle pedal is about the same as your passenger car, about what you have there. And how hard is it to control on the burnout? Almost impossible. Because what happens when they hit the throttle on these cars, as you know well, Steve, as soon as the butterflies are off the seat, there's just a tremendous amount of air and fuel available to this motor. And they virtually explode the tires into tire smoke. Many of the teams actually put a quick pin and have made a burnout device because it's awfully hard for those drivers to control it, because as soon as you go down the throttle, the car jumps up in the air, bucks, and it moves you around, and your foot moves with it. And so throttle pins are very, very popular.
And especially the younger drivers. I know Kristen Powell had a throttle stop or throttle pin at Pomona, and on one of her qualifying runs, the crew forgot to put it in, and she floorboarded it, which she should be able to do, and banged the blower in the whole deal, but it wasn't her fault.
No.
Now, a guy like, let's see, who does the best burnouts? John Force, Al Hoffman, Dean Scusa.
Scott Coletta, as far as I'm concerned, Scott Coletta makes the most beautiful burnouts without a pin than anybody I have ever seen in my life. He is just so smooth. He squeezes very slowly into it, gets the tires rolling, keeps on going down the throttle till the car comes up just a little bit, keeps the tires right there. Very great driver when it comes to burnouts.
That's right, and don't be trying to put a throttle stop in any of those guys we just
mentioned. No. I mean,
not only don't they need it, but that would be an insult.
Oh, Scott Coletta would whip your hands if he even thought you were going to try to put a throttle stop on his car.
And here's one from Tim in Valdosta, Georgia. Boy, Tim's a busy guy today. What's up with Eddie Hill? He seems to be having a lot of trouble with dropped cylinders and getting to stick the car.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's been a problem for everybody all year long. The amount of fuel volumes that we put in these cars, I guess the best way for me to explain it to you folks is very simply this. If you turned on 8 showers at the same time, the volume of water that's coming out of those showers is the volume of water or fuel that we're putting into these motors. The difference is instead of being at 30 or 40 pounds of pressure, we're doing 550, even 600 pounds I've seen on certain cars. Tremendous amount of pressure. You're sitting there with 32 nozzles, 8 in the hat, 8 in the manifold, and 16, 2 in each cylinder down in the cylinder heads. And that's a tremendous amount of fuel volume. So that's why it's so hard and explosive to try to control these cars to make a nice, smooth, clean burnout.
And to try to do that, there's 2 spark plugs, 2 independent magnetos, and still that kind of fuel flow can just literally drown the spark plugs.
Well, especially when the cars go out there and you're talking about Eddie smoking the tires. Yes, that's a very big problem. He goes out there and let's just say that the car's running at 7,000 engine RPM. Basically, when they hit the throttle, the engine jumps to about 7,800 to 8,000 RPM within 0.3 of a second of hitting the throttle. If the car starts to spin the tires, the engine RPM will go up from 8,000 to 9,500. Well, your fuel volume goes from 56, which is planned, to 65 or 70. And all of a sudden, you've got so much fuel in the motor, the magnetos just won't fire it anymore. And therefore, when one cylinder drops, now you have 7 trying to do the work of 8, then another one will drop. And then you start mixing them up, and that's what we call it, mixing them up. They just can't fire the cylinder pressures that are involved with the motors. Tough deal.
You know, here's some fan mail for Shelly Anderson.
Oh, boy.
You didn't think it'd be for us, did you? We are really enjoying the pay-per-view broadcast again. We watched the Houston race, too. Shelly Anderson is doing a great job with the color commentary. She's a lot prettier than the other guys also. If you can keep her around for the rest of the day. Thanks, Paul Ellis at Jacksonville, Florida.
Well, she may be right about you, but not me. My wife would argue with that big time.
Well, I happen to agree with Paul. She did a fantastic job. Not only is she beautiful, but Shelly Anderson also has a college degree, and her major was in communications, and she communicates very, very well. You know, Frank Hawley and I, we have one more of the Stephen Frank Show out in the pits, finding out about all of those 2-car teams. Here's our final shot at it. Randy Anderson won 2 Winston championships in the alcohol funny car ranks, which is one of the reasons he and his dad Brad decided to put him into the big time, the fuel coupes. But there's another important reason as well. He and his sister's car can now share the same parts. They don't have to have totally different inventories, and Brad makes those heads and a lot of the other parts. It'll save him a fortune, plus take Randy a little bit up the scale in the sport of drag racing.
Another thing that's helping the Andersons are their crew chiefs, Larry Meyer and Larry Fraser. Now, they share the same first name, but they also share a lot of personal characteristics. They're very quiet, calm, thinking individuals. And not only do they share personality traits, but they're also starting to share a lot of information from one team to the other. They're able to do that at the racetrack on race day, and that's helping the performance of both the top-fuel dragster and the funny car.
Okay, hopefully you enjoyed our little examination of all of the 2-car teams. It's still mighty wet. An awful lot of the fans are hanging out. In fact, I think about all of them. If they're not in the stands, they're undercover somewhere. And the neat thing about even the biggest of the pro racers, if it's raining, they tell their fans, come on, don't get wet. Stand under my awning. You see it all the time. We've got some more funny car qualifying highlights coming up here in just a little bit. And joining us is the Unk. He asked to be called the Unk, right? I'm not lying about that.
Just Unk.
Just Unk.
Just Unk.
Not the Unk.
Not the Unk. Just Unk.
Okay.
Bob Fry's been calling me Unk for years. And it's been my nickname for years. So, hey, you know, Unkifer's a tough last name. Might as well shorten it up for everybody and make it easy.
Bob who?
Unk.
No, Bob who?
Unkifer.
Oh, Bob Fry, I meant.
Yeah, Bob Fry.
He calls me a lot of things.
Too many Bobs.
Say here. All right, we have got some funny car qualifying highlights from Saturday morning. You feel up to doing that, Unk?
Hey, let's do it.
All
I'm
right.
ready. Hey, truck, let's roll it. Well, as you can see from the video, Saturday morning was definitely prettier than what it is right now.
Cruz Pedregon up right now. Excuse me, Tim Wilkerson up right now. And Whit Bazemore, the Winston Mustang, over here in the lane closest to you. Tim Wilkerson, the Napa Auto Parts. Pontiac Firebird over on the far side. Wilkerson and Bazemore on these laps did not find themselves getting into the program here. Bazemore and Wilkerson, both cars up in smoke immediately. Lewis Bloom joining me back here in the booth. Lewis, those weren't the laps that either one of those drivers were looking for.
Yep, tricky racetrack for both teams. Tim Wilkerson and Whit Bazemore with that brand new car built by Dave Jeffers, one of the last Swindle cars ever to be built, as a matter of fact. This was a tough weekend for a lot of fuel teams. A lot of teams made great runs. I'd say very few made a string of 4 passes to go down the racetrack, all the qualifying sections to really get, a real handle on this track.
Well, it wasn't the qualifying sessions that we have come accustomed to. As you said, none of the teams really made 4 qualifying laps that were all very solid runs, such as Randy Anderson at Gainesville this year, where he was 5-0, 5-0, 5-10, I believe, and back into the 5-0s again. But the numbers just weren't there. It was a struggle for a lot of these guys to get down the racetrack. We just saw Wilkerson and Bazemore from yesterday morning's session just go up in smoke almost immediately off the line. Bazemore probably had it a little bit tighter, but his 60-foot time was just a 1:05. And when we look at numbers that are down into the mid 9-second range, it makes a heck of a lot of difference when you're up in that 1:05. You can see by the time they got to 60-foot, they were already in trouble.
The Matco Tools car of Dean Scusa with the help of Ron Swearingen. And there's Cruiser with the McDonald's car. That beautiful Pontiac Firebird out of Joe Gibbs Racing.
Now both of these guys, as they launched, and you'll be able to watch it with us on screen, as they launched, just absolutely took off like a rocket. Cruz Pedregon had an exceptional 9:16 60-foot time. Scusa was right there with him, though, at a 9:33. So both of these cars hooked up almost immediately right off the line, but then struggled a little bit down track.
Dean Scusa backing up the Matco Tools car. And I'll tell you something, after what we've seen so far in the first round of Funny Car, we already know that the Dean Scusa camp advances to round number 2, and that really tough fire with that brilliant 5-0 pass by Cruz Pedregon. They're really looking for the rain to come down in the McDonald's pit. Hard to believe racers would actually say that, but today it might work to their advantage.
Well, and they're not the only ones. I mean, we've got the Camps pit, the Copenhagen car, Don Prudhomme's machine, Tom Anderson. You heard him earlier on his interview, talking about the fact they could use a little rain as well. So,
Dave Settles, the crew chief on the McDonald's car. I like the way he bangs the body right before the run. Cycling up his driver, Cruz Pedregon. Now let's watch the first part of the racetrack and also watch the back half. This was a tricky part for both these teams on this run.
You can see a little wisp of smoke off the back of Scusa's Matco Tool cars. Carried him through to a 5:35. You saw Cruz, though, right about a 800, 900 foot mark. The car really getting up on the tires.
are overpowering the racetrack. The tires spinning. You saw the smoke come out of the back of the car. That was tire smoke, not engine smoke, as we saw earlier, unfortunately. Crews went through it at 548. 192 miles an hour. SCUSA, though, with just that wisp of smoke as they worked their way down track, a 535, 213 mile an hour pass. So the Matco Tools machine of SCUSA got a little bit more out of that run than did the guys in the McDonald's camp. Dave Settles is crew chief, Cruz Pedregon at the wheel, and as you said, they're unfortunately hoping for rain.
Next pair, Ray Higley getting set to go, taking on Ron Capps.
You saw Don Prudhomme on screen, the team owner of the Copenhagen Chevrolet Camaro.
Nick Boninfanti Jr. to your right, a former crew chief on the Coletta car. And there's Tom Anderson, a former crew chief for Al Hoffman.
That's right.
It's amazing how some of the teams, they switch players, but a lot of the same faces out there in the crews, all the different crews around the fuel pits.
Well, you see the guys working their way up through the ranks, a la Rick Castle this year on Bob Vandergrift's car. They start out as a crew member. They start out as a wrench, doing the right side, the bottom end, the clutch, whatever the case may be. And Bob Vandergrift saw some untapped talent there in Rick Castle and made a very wise choice. Here's Ray Higley. Both cars doing their burnouts. Higley's machine, the Redline Oil Landair Express car. Landair Express, a trucking transportation company. Jim Stahlbomber, you heard Ray Higley talking about him earlier, out of Topeka, Kansas. Got his start in the Supercomp dragster. Raced it for a number of years there at Heartland Park, Topeka. He has 7 children and 5 junior dragsters. Let me tell you, when we run a bracket race at Topeka, if Jim's around anywhere, all 5 of the junior dragster cars are there. Absolutely incredible. Stahlbomber helping out, doing some tuning on the car for Higley. The Redline Oil machine, although it's based out of California, a lot of the work being done there in the heart of the country, there in my neck of the woods. Ron Capps on this pass had a much better lap than Ray Higley. We'll let you watch it. Again, watch the short times, the 60-foot time, just past the Christmas tree. It's where these cars make so much of their launch come into effect as they work their way down track. If you don't get the launch, I don't care how much horsepower you've got, you're not going to make it up on the other end.
Nick Boninfanti Jr. There's Tom Anderson, the crew chief. Love the look of that anniversary Z28 Camaro. Beautiful car.
I tell you what, if you had that thing wired up at home through the surround sound on your Pioneer or whatever stereo system, you could hear the echo in the background, and that is exactly what it sounds like here at Virginia Motorsports Park. I mean, the cackle, the carrying of the sound, the reverberation of it here in the little valley of the racetrack. I mean, absolutely incredible. We hope you all enjoyed it.
I actually have a surround sound set up back home in New Jersey, and when I turn it up loud and I watch NHRA Championship drag racing on pay-per-view or on Diamond P Sports,
the neighbors beat on the wall.
Oh, I hear complaints, actually.
5:33 that time for Capps, 8:56 for Higley as he drifted out close to the wall and held her off.
You can hear the crowd in the background because the announcer at that time, Bob Fry, said, "How many people like John Force?" And you heard the roar.
Well, yeah, that happens a lot.
Oh, yeah. He does great burnouts, too.
Oh.
Think that sells some T-shirts, Bob?
Just a little bit. John Force, Mark Oswald, tell you what, I'm just going to back out of this one and let you listen. Patented. John Force, well out to half track. You can hear the crowd in the background going nuts over the whole deal. Now, there's nothing wrong with Oswald's car. Force does the long burnout, takes him a little while to get backed up. Mark Oswald, the in-and-out machine, The Dodge, they don't do the long burnout. They let Force fire, do his burnout, get backed up. They fire, their burnout.
Pretty conservative funny car burnout, but for the in-and-out team, they run pretty strong. That's all they need to do.
Well, they run strong, and the word is, if you talk to the tire guys, is that the long burnout Force does isn't necessarily mandatory.
Ready to move up with the Castrol car. Mark Oswald, the In-N-Out Burger car from California with Bill Schultz as the crew chief. Let's see what John comes up with prime time on Saturday afternoon here at the Pennzoil Nationals. The driver of the year. Problems there for John Force at the end of the run. Mark Oswald with a pretty good pass. As we check out the numbers, Force a 550, Oswald a 542, both mixing it up just a little bit in the cylinder head department. Good shot of the In-N-Out Burger car in the camera right there from camera 6.
Mark Oswald coming up a little short on the racetrack out there. You can see the Suzuki Quad Runner out there getting ready to hitch up. They'll pull him off track. Force with his 550 that lap. You could see him swerve out a little close to the wall. Oswald that time the 542. So we'll hold for just a moment.
I got you. Well, don't do that. Okay, let's do it.
Here comes Tony Pendergast and the Castrol GTX machine. Set to go. He ran down the
For those of you that may be just tuning in to our pay-per-view action from Virginia Motorsports Park here in Dinwiddie, Virginia, we are under a little bit of a rain delay right now. So what you're seeing on your screen is highlights from yesterday early funny car qualifying session. Trying to bring you a little bit of action. We're going to work our way through this. We're also going to roll into some Federal Mogul Dragster and Federal Mogul Funny Car first round of elimination from yesterday afternoon. So if you're into the Federal Mogul Dragsters, the alcohol categories of Dragster and Funny Car, don't go away because we're going to show you first round coming up here in just a little bit. Got a couple more singles to run from Saturday's first or early qualifying session. Oh, the In-N-Out Burger car. I live in Kansas City, and I wish they'd build it In-N-Out in Kansas City. Love the double-double.